What is an unexplainable memory from your childhood? Not particularly interesting, but something I've always wondered about. As a kid it was only my mum and I. Sometimes she'd leave me home alone while she was at work, for example, during school holidays and some weekends. I was about 7 and the first few times I was terrified, completely convinced someone would break in. So I'd take enough food from the kitchen and lock myself in my bedroom all day, wouldn't drink too much water, to avoid using the bathroom. When I watched television I set it to the lowest volume possible and sat right up close to listen, and I wouldn't turn on any lights when it got dark, just squinted at my books near the window. That way burglars wouldn't know I was home. I played hiding games with myself sometimes, like can I fit into this hamper so that burglars won't find me if they break in. After a year of nothing happening my nerves settled, though I was still locking the bedroom door after me. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was in my bedroom when I heard a door slam in the living room during the daytime. I froze. There was rustling, and I could hear heavy footsteps back and forth. I remained totally still. Whenever it went quiet, I thought maybe it would be okay to get up, and then noises would start again. I heard things moved around, maybe shuffling. The movements were purposeful, in a hurry. I don't remember how long it was until they stopped long enough that I thought they left. I don't recall whether I heard the door slam shut again. Honestly, I think I just got sick of sitting complete still in one position. The sun was setting and I crept out to look around. The place was maybe messier, but our whole apartment was always in disarray so I couldn't really tell. For some reason I thought I'd get in trouble if anything was missing. So I started tidying up. My mom came home later, and I didn't say a word. It was probably just my mom coming back for something, or a neighbor, or at most, an opportunistic thief who didn't find anything worth stealing. But I did always wonder what happened that day. That was your future therapist sorting through your baggage. I don't believe in the supernatural today, but I used to. Anyway, so there I was, a 7-year-old kid in rural Utah. I was staying the night at my grandparents' house on Main Street. I didn't want to sleep, so around midnight I went down into the basement. I took my Matchbox cars and played Night City with my glowing better blocks. I had this little metropolis going on when my uncle came down to play with me. Should I mention my great uncle died when I was 2? Well, he did. Anyway, my great uncle and I played a game called Night City for a good hour. I remember it like it was yesterday. He drove the Lincoln, because that was his favorite car. Anyway, it got late. He had to leave so he wouldn't miss his train. He left. I went to sleep. The next morning I asked when uncle was coming back to play again. My grandparents were slightly offended that I brought it up. They hadn't seen him since before I was born and wanted nothing to do with him. He was the black sheep of the family. I said him and I played cars and showed them the car that he drove in our city. They were uncomfortable with this and chalked it up to my imagination. I never met my uncle again. He died when I was 2. Over the years since then, I have learned that he drove both a train for Union Pacific and a Lincoln MKVII. Like I said, I don't believe in ghosts, but I don't know how 7-year-old me knew things about an estranged relative who died when I was 2 and was never spoken of, due to certain family issues. To this day I don't know what happened that night, but I remember playing Night City with some guy who said he was my uncle like it was yesterday. He was super nice, and at the end of the game simply left out the back door. I have this memory of sleeping in an office block in South London with my mum on an airbed. I recall looking out of the window and feeling sad. Years later I was driving and got a very strong impulse to stop outside this building and I was 100% certain it was that one. Every time I went past it felt odd. My mum says it didn't happen. Everyone else concurs. My best conclusion at this stage is that I probably had a very vivid dream that became conflated with something else. I saw the original Jurassic Park when it was in theaters in the summer of 1993. I was 7 years old. During the scene at the end where the Velociraptors are about to get Alan Grant and company, I very clearly remember the T-Rex suddenly bursting through the wall of the visitor center before it grabs the first raptor in its jaws. The wall was made out of a grayish-white material, concrete or plaster. Back in those years you had to wait a long time for movies to come out on VHS. But when it finally didn't, my parents brought it home. I couldn't wait to watch it. I remember being confused at the end. because I was waiting in that tense raptor scene for the T-Rex to come bursting through the wall, but instead it was just suddenly there, grabbing the raptor, as we can all see in the film. I thought that it didn't seem to make much sense now, because how did the T-Rex get in the building all of a sudden seemingly without anyone noticing? I suppose I put it out of my mind, and always just figured that it was either my imagination or that the scene of the T-Rex crashing through the wall appeared only in the theatrical version and was removed for the home video. But then recently I decided to Google about that scene and was shocked to discover, at last, that there were others that remembered this scene as well. A fandom page says this: rumors persist that the theatrical version of Jurassic Park included a scene towards the end of the film where the Tyrannosaurus actually smashes through a plaster wall in the visitor center. This scene was not included in the DVD or VHS release of the film, and no evidence other than first-person accounts has been found for this scene's existence. Steve Spaz Williams in his Vimeo channel said no such scene ever existed. Spaz cannot be said of towing the official line as he is no longer with Isle or even in mainstream Hollywood for the matter of fact, so it may be assumed that he is telling the truth. In other words, Steve Williams, who built the T-Rex used in Jurassic Park and worked on the other dinosaur effects, has stated that there is no such scene. Here's his response in the comment section of the above Vimeo link when asked if there was a scene where the T-Rex broke into the visitor center at the end. We never did a shot where we saw the Rex enter the rotunda area. It was Spielberg who actually added that sequence cause he was so happy with how all the other shots were proceeding. Steve Price, who dies during Jumanji, animated that final shot. This is deep in the comments, so unfortunately not enough people will see this, but you have royally effed my mind up here. I remember that scene vividly, the same action of grabbing the Velociraptor and crashing through the wall. I was 3 in '93, so no way I watched it in cinemas, but I remember that scene exactly as you describe. My sister and I apparently both had the same dream one night, a scary one. We were staying in this villa where we had to share a room and we both woke up suddenly. The window was open, when it hadn't been before. I realized she was awake as well and told her I'd had a bad dream, and as I started to describe it, she started talking along with me, describing the same dream. In it, this black creature that looked like a bull, only it had shiny, scaly, plastic looking skin, was standing in the open window with this weird mechanical device, and it somehow fired a projectile at the lamp in the room, which started rocking back and forth. Neither of us wanted to get up and close the window in case the thing was actually out there, so we called for our mum and she closed it, reassured us in typical mum fashion, etc. For months we would talk about that incident and we could never figure out how we both managed to have the same exact dream at the same time. I could lucid dream when I was a kid. I would actually get really excited to go to bed because I could decide what to dream and then dream it. I had a reoccurring character in my lucid dreaming. He was a boy my age with blonde hair. We would always play in this backyard playground type setting that has a big brick wall on the edge. One night I dreamt that we really wanted to find out what was on the other side of that wall. So we climbed a tree and the boy climbed onto the wall, looked back at me and waved, and went over it. I never lucid dreamed again after that. It actually caused me a lot of distress as a kid. I legit missed him terribly and tried so hard to lucid dream but just couldn't do it anymore after that. I'm like 95% sure I sort of got hit by a car when crossing the street with my mom. There was a red light and we didn't cross at a crosswalk. A car inched forward and I remember falling onto the hood, but I was fine. I used to literally get flashbacks for years, but my mom swears it never happened. I think she's lying. Hit job gone bad. Of course she's lying. My mother walked into my room, waking me up to tell me that most of the world's population was dead. I spent the rest of the day as normal, eating breakfast, going shopping with her, going to playground, then eating dinner, albeit acting quite nervous throughout. The next day, she tried to make it clear that what started the previous morning wasn't true. I asked her if she remembered, but she told me she didn't. I'm certain it wasn't a dream, because I recalled the rest of what happened the previous day to her, only to be met by her confirmation that everything I remembered was correct, right down to how shaky I was and how upset I seemed, all except for the part that humanity was on the brink of extinction. When I was about 4 or 5, I was in by my front door when I saw my father come in the house, put down his briefcase, and then walk to my mother to give her a kiss on the cheek. Then the front door opened again. It was my father, again. I looked next to me where I had seen him put his briefcase. It was gone. I looked back at him, scared, and said, "You just did that." I have never hallucinated in the more than 25 years since this happened, and nothing like it has ever happened since. I welcome theories or explanations. Glitch in the Matrix. My friend's dad came up to me and said he had a secret to tell me that I couldn't tell anyone else. Then he said, "I'm secretly in love with you." But that was where it ended. Oh man, that's really weird. I know. And his wife, my friend's mom, always seemed to dislike me. I think there might be a connection there, but I'll never know for sure. When I was really young, I was being babysat by a couple of teenage college-age girls that were friends with one of my older cousins. They took me to a party, laid me down in a random bedroom upstairs, and put on a random videotape that definitely wasn't Barney or anything else suited for children. My mom swears this never happened, but I remember it way too clearly for me to make it up. The watching TV bit of this sort of happened to me in a different way, but I remember it quite clearly. My babysitter wanted to hang out with her friends, so I got left in the back room for some reason watching Coming to America with Eddie Murphy. I had a nice time and asked my mum if that babysitter could visit again. My family and I were driving out of Bellows, a campsite beach for military families in Hawaii. I lazily gaze out the window and something catches my eye. About 30 feet away in a clearing before a metal gate leading into the forest was a massive bird, like 8 feet tall, massive. It had a long neck, brown feathers, and very thick long legs. My jaw dropped and I was still processing what I had seen when my dad said, "What the hell was that?" Turns out he had seen it too, and we both described it identically. No one else saw it, and by the time our brains had caught up with our eyes, it was too late to turn around. I will always regret not turning around. When we returned later in the day, there was nothing there. When we asked a guard about it, he laughed at us. I scoured the internet afterward, and it looked like nothing I could find. At least, nothing that isn't extinct. It looked amazingly similar to one of the larger species of moa, but those lived in New Zealand thousands of miles away and died out hundreds of years ago. This happened back in 2009, and to this day I wonder whether rice or a Lazarus species. Yo, this jarred some childhood memories. I lived on farmland in the country. We didn't farm. My family owned and leased the land, and so I was pretty familiar with the local wildlife. I'd seen plenty of eagles and owls in the past, so I could recognize them from a distance. Well, one day as I'm riding home in the car, my dad points at one of the power lines along the road, and perched on top I see something huge. This thing looked taller than me, too solid of a profile to be a crane, too big to be an eagle or turkey vulture. It was still half a mile away or so I couldn't make out any fine details or colors, and before we got close enough to see it well, it swooped down off the pole and flew away. Never saw anything like it again. It looked bigger than our car. My dad is convinced to this day we saw a pterodactyl. Grandma thinks it was a thunderbird. I remember being at a playground with my family and seeing lightning strike right in front of me. Didn't hear any thunder. No one else saw it, but I remember seeing it pretty vividly. Not sure if there's something that can go on in your brain that would cause something like that to happen, but I remember pleading with my mom to believe that I had just seen a lightning bolt strike right in front of me, and she just ignored me. Similar to me, I was at my grandpa's farm when a storm rolled through. I don't remember lightning hitting anywhere close, but the flash was there. Then, all of a sudden, this strange ball of light floated around the ground for a while. I didn't know what it was for years until I heard of something called ball lightning. Not sure what it was, but it was hella cool. Sometime before the age of 5, I remember being convinced that if I tried hard enough and believed in myself, I could fly. So I would practice flying, jumping down the stairs when nobody was watching. I never developed my ability to fly, but I vividly remember basically cannonballing down 14 steps and just gliding down in midair and landing at the bottom totally safe and uninjured. Many times over the years, I too have this memory and only just now realize it doesn't make sense. The whole neighborhood thought I was kidnapped. I don't really know why and what the actual F is the thought process of how they think that happened, but apparently the people are frantically searching me. What I remembered is that my elder cousin and her husband took me to an internet cafe to let me watch them pick their wedding outfits. When we returned, everyone was shocked. My brother smiles because he knew I was in trouble. My mom was crying. And my dad slapped the shit out of me. It was so surreal. I used to have nightmares. My dad put up a poster of Peter Pan in my room and told me that when I went to sleep, Peter would fly out of the poster and chase all of the monsters away. I never had another bad dream. My mum told me that when I was a toddler, I would almost never drink any liquids. This was until I was 5 when I hit my jaw on a pole, and for some reason, after that, I always drink lots of water, even to this day. Your mom probably said drink your water or I'll hit you in the jaw with this pole. I was like 3-5 years old when this happened. I woke one night while camping in a cabin, and I saw a cat-tailed angle from this lamp. It had sink down, and then disappear back up into the lampshade. It also started calling for me, going like hoo-hoo, unnerved the hell out of little me. I can't remember if I just never checked to see if there was anything there, or that I did check and there was nothing there. I chalk it up to just being so tired I was hallucinating. Me and my friends used to visit a haunted mansion regularly when we were younger, hoping to see something weird. One day we did. It's a giant A building and it was always beyond me why someone would just abandon it and let it rot away. It was always apparent nobody lives in there, so we got scared shitless when lights went on in every single room. My friends to this day swear they saw a figure running through the buildings at an incredible pace, not trying to look out the window but just running really fast. I didn't. Nonetheless, the moment they started running I also went full on Usain Bolt mode. Since they still say it's what happened, I don't have any reason to doubt it. So either we saw something paranormal or just a hobo that really liked installing light bulbs in an abandoned mansion so that he can run from room to room just to scare people that are watching the building from the outside. Either way, the rest of my life I for sure won't even remotely go close that building anymore. I have an extremely vivid memory of my brother and I standing on top of our backyard tool shed some 13 or so years ago. We climbed up top, and then proceeded to fly around in the air about 30 feet over the grass. Eventually we got scared that we wouldn't be able to land, so we came back down, and of course, we couldn't do it again. Here's the best part, my brother also has this exact same memory, down to all the details. We genuinely don't know what happened and still wonder it was real. I'm not sure how to account for it.